Welcome, everybody, to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joel Alge, the realist recruiter. We are back with another great episode, and we're going to talk about an industry today which I think doesn't necessarily get as much attention, but there is a lot of hiring needs, has a lot of demand for people. And in an age where AI roles and almost like the tech space seems to be getting disrupted, I think it's good that we look at some other industries. I am excited to have Chrystal with us today. Chrystal, why don't you give us a quick introduction? Who are you? What do you do? And who do you do it for? Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Recruiting is No Joke. I want to give a special shout out to Hey Milo AI for sponsoring this show. You know how word travels fast when something actually works? Well, recruiters we know have started using Hey Milo AI, and they're already talking about the difference. They've reclaimed back hours that used to vanish into the black hole of initial phone screens, and now they spend that time coaching candidates, refining roles, working with hiring managers, and strategizing growth. In those frantic, high-volume hiring cycles where you got to go through thousands of applicants, the last thing you want to do is awkward, half-baked interviews that tarnish your reputation. Hey Milo's conversational AI consistently delivers smooth, two-way interviews at scale, and that help people remember you for the right reasons. So if you're comparing providers, pick the one that lifts your reputation and brand instead of the one that leaves candidates shaking their heads. Go ahead and book a demo today at heymilo.ai and find out why teams leading rely on Hey Milo. Now back to the show.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Joel. So my name is Chrystal Gualtieri. I am the Global Talent Acquisition Leader for CKE Restaurants, which is the parent company of both Carl's Jr. and Hardee's restaurants.
And how long have you been there for?
I've been here for roughly 3.5 years full-time. I was a contractor for 6 months back when their headquarters were moving to the Nashville area, which was quite a swirly, whirly, crazy time. So it feels closer to 5 years. And if I'm being honest, it feels closer to like 10 or 12 years with just the way recruiting kind of takes its toll on you. But I've been in recruiting specifically for about 8.5 years, but I've been able to do a lot of other interesting things along that journey before getting to where I am now.
No, I love it. So walk us through, how did you get started in recruitment? And did you always know you were going to end up as like an internal recruiter? Like walk us through that journey.
Yeah, sure. So I started in nonprofit and I grew to be a hiring manager myself and learned that I was terrible at candidate selection the hard way, just because I feel like I got in the Peter principle, which is people will promote you up until the point where you start struggling. And when I had to pick people to work for me is when I started to struggle. So I leaned into learning how to do that better, then ended up in a role where I was hiring 300 people a year for 3 years in a row. And through just that repetition and the ways I had to get creative to do it so quickly and to do it well, I started to inherit some skills that make it a lot more intuitive for me to interview and identify if someone has the intelligence and the integrity along with the personality to be a good fit for a role. And then I went to corporate. And I think I skipped agency recruiting, which is what everybody else does when they're trying to get into this field. But I went straight into corporate recruiting, learned what it meant to do it in a corporate setting. After my high volume recruiting days, now I've done corporate recruiting, over 200 corporate hires. But the more fascinating stat, I think, is by the end of 2025, I'll have hired more than 1,500 people total in my recruiting career. Yeah.
Come on, you get a trophy for that too.
Yeah, so, okay, I'll take it.
You know, you get $10 for every single recruit.
Ooh, okay,
wouldn't that be not $100? Well, look, I know we were kind of chatting before the show as well. You know, I've had a lot of people on the show that are from tech companies, the tech industry. I think it's no shock that tech industry is going through some changes right now. obviously AI is impacting a lot of those jobs. And it's probably the industry where AI is going to have the biggest impact just by the nature of like how people in that industry think. And obviously they're quick to implement technology. But talk to me about like the hospitality space, because I'm sure since COVID, I've kind of heard mixed signals from that space. But what are your thoughts around, particularly people who are maybe looking to pivot, maybe get away from tech, which isn't as stable, or maybe for entry level people? What's your outlook for hospitality and what are you seeing in that industry specifically?
So I get to spend a lot of my time connecting with hiring managers in corporate, where some of them do leverage like basic AI tools, and some of them are still like, they don't have a positive sentiment to it. They're kind of trying to do it the way they've always done it without using AI. And I get a little concerned for those that kind of get stuck in their old mindsets and their old ways. Yeah, it has been successful to do it up to this point, but if we can't remain relevant and pivot and adapt new ways of doing things, chances are the business will find AI tools or people to use those AI tools to do it better, faster, more efficiently, and things like that. But I don't have as much personal experience with the folks in the restaurants and closest to the restaurants. It's more the leaders that help come up with the strategy and the ways in which we need to operate. I don't know. It's tricky because we also have to be really mindful about how we use AI. We've got to be able to be smart about if we're going to plug in, hey, write me an email to send to the chief of this department. Like, we have to be smart about what information we're giving to a tool that doesn't belong to us. Now we have Copilot. That helps, but it's not my preferred place to ask for email advice and things like that. But I'm hopeful that there will be AI agents that help make operations much more streamlined. I was talking to a gal not that long ago for a company called Ziggy that has this most incredible operations tool to help with folks in the restaurant setting or operations in general, that I'm thinking like tools like this are what's going to revolutionize our industry to help the people behind the desk where they're doing the sale at the restaurants or whichever store it might be, have the actual human interaction, be able to look at a customer in the eyes and start recognizing their customers more and having those human interactions. That's my hope.
Yeah. And obviously you mentioned you're not doing like the restaurant recruitment, but I do know that portion of recruiting is extremely challenging as well.
Gosh.
Is that still a kind of just like an ongoing challenge that everybody's facing, like just trying to get restaurant staff? Is that still a pretty big issue right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Great Resignation amplified it, where people felt like they didn't need to work. And since then, there has been a lot of revolving doors, especially for the restaurants that don't have a sense of connection and a reason they want to stay at that store. People in that industry will leave for 20 cents more down the street if they don't have a reason to stay with workplace best friends, or the culture is great, or they're able to work around their hours for school or whatever else is going on in their life. So we try really hard to be thoughtful about how to set our general managers up for success, to own that restaurant space and make it feel like a really good place for people like that. We need to change out a restaurant general manager, bring someone brand new who either doesn't understand the culture or tries to set their own. It creates more of a revolving door. So we do not have a hiring problem in our company. We have a retention challenge in a good portion of restaurants. Hopefully also with AI, it'll be easier to do. Right now, we leverage Indeed quite a bit for that area of hiring, but I have got one team member who manages that side of things, and then I'm more all things LinkedIn and white collar related. But yeah, the restaurant industry could certainly use a bit of support with AI tools to help get the right candidates at the right stores, and capacity planning, make sure there's the right amount at the right times, things like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that retention piece, I think, it's a challenge, especially in those hourly positions as well. And like being able to create environments that people want to be in is a real challenge. What about, so on the corporate side, obviously, the corporate job market is tough right now. What are some of the challenges you're experiencing in terms of, you put a job ad out, Are you getting lots of people apply? Like, what are some of the challenges you're having right now, with the job market the way it is?
Geez, I don't know which way to go with this answer. I could answer it in a lot of different ways. I would say the right applicant flow. We get a lot of applicants, but, I've heard on a couple other of the episodes you've talked with some folks who've been able to speak very articulately about the challenges we're facing with having too many of the wrong applicants. It takes a lot of effort on the back end to be able to weed through the wrong ones to get to the few right ones, and then go through the process of trying to help ensure that at least those candidates have a positive candidate experience and they get a sense of what it's like to work with our company by what it's like working with me, because I'm a firm believer that everything communicates and the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so if they are obviously spraying their resume at a ton of different companies or in a ton of our jobs, for example, then I know they're not being very intentional with their time. But the candidates who go out of their way to customize the resume to say CKE Restaurants and then their name resume, I can tell they've gone the extra mile to at least try. And then I cross my fingers and hope that it's not one of those where they just plugged in that job description and modify their resume to specifically be perfect for this role, because then you don't know what's true. But I also can see how that is an element of their character to say, I know how to use AI tools to make this a personalized resume and go through the steps. So if they're an authentic person at the end of that, then great, absolutely a great fit, because we don't have enough people and tools and resources in the business to not be like that. So anyways, it's finding those candidates in the lake of candidates that aren't a match is certainly one challenge. Another challenge is that we are a hybrid work environment. And so people who want to be fully remote, this isn't a good match. For
Are
people
you
who,
still seeing a lot of people wanting fully remote, or like
oh yeah,
still
for sure.
applying? And then even though you say hybrid on the job, they're still applying for it, wanting
They
the fully
still apply.
remote.
Yeah, they're like, I just wasn't sure if that might be negotiable or if I could do 1 day a week instead of 3 days a week. Like, there's a lot of ambiguity in what does that mean to be hybrid, and does it have to apply to me? So even when I see candidates that are within 50 miles of the location we're filling, they're not always interested in coming in the office. But those that are, it's amazing, because they love the fact that they can work remotely Mondays and Fridays, but to be able to connect personally, get to know folks they may never have had a chance to meet before. I personally love the opportunity to learn kind of by osmosis. Like, I'm hearing an interesting conversation in another department that I wouldn't ever have had the chance to listen in on. And there's so much of that can take place when we're in the office, but it can also be a lot when you're there 5 days a week. So I'm glad it's only 3 days a week in the office, and I get to kind of put not my guard, but more of my, like, I can relax a little bit more when I'm working from home.
What about, like, in terms of when people are in the office, are you doing anything strategically to kind of help kind of build those relationships? Or, I know some companies have been just really intentional with how and why, when people are in the office, like almost like creating activities for team members. Like, are you guys doing anything like that? Or, like, is there anything intentionally you're doing to just kind of help with that relationship building while people are in the office, or is it just happening naturally?
Yeah, so a lot of it is natural. We all use the break room to make lunch or grab coffee or soda or whatever. And we are a restaurant company and we have a lot of food a lot of the time. So if you're just like, I need a break, I need to stand up, it's not a bad idea to go check the break room if there's any free, whatever the limited time offer is, or if a leadership team had a lunch meeting and there's leftovers that we can all enjoy after, that kind of thing. But up until recently, we've been really intentional about having monthly work anniversary celebrations where we would all come together. There'd be someone on a mic with some music in advance. And hey, we just want to recognize all of these folks that have been with the company for, whether this is their first month, the first year, all the way up to 40, which is incredible to me that there are still people in our business that have been here for more than 30 years, which is fantastic, but also
Yeah,
like,
awesome.
wow, like you don't even know what the rest of the world is like if you only lived here. But kudos to them. They love what they do and they keep doing it. So we did those monthly celebrations and there would always be a sweet treat. And then we also do things like a Christmas party, holiday time party. We do a Thanksgiving potluck, but now we're shifting. We know that monthly kind of feels like a lot. So we're shifting to quarterly and we're doing an in-person quarterly business update. And we're doing it off-site to make it feel a little bit more special and easier for folks to disconnect from the daily work and focus on interacting with each other, and encouraging folks that don't work in the office to still come by and get to know some of their peers and meet some new folks and get to know different parts of the business. And then the rest of us get the cool high level business update on how we're doing and what we're focusing on and where we're growing, things like that.
Yeah, I love that. So when you're talking to candidates about the hybrid work environment, how quickly are you bringing that up? And like, are you finding like, hey, really quickly in the conversation, kind of establishing what that looks like? Because like you said, hybrid could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll attack this answer in two ways. The first is I make it clear in the job post. So if they if they actually read the job description, it's there. And then if they get to apply through our applicant tracking system, it's one of the knockout questions. This is a 3-day in the office hybrid arrangement. We're in the office Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays regularly. Does this work arrangement work for you? Yes or no? And so if they answer that as a no, then they'll, thank you for applying. We appreciate you keeping us on your radar. Please apply later if it's a good match, kind of thing. But not everybody does. And we have a lot of aggregators that it goes out to. And when they get into our applicant tracking system through maybe an Indeed Easy Apply, they don't answer all those questions. And so it's still something that I need to bring up in the interview process. And the way that works for me, that I have, once this stumbled on my mind of this is how I wish every recruiter did this. It works wonderfully for a lot of ways, and bringing up the hybrid piece is one of them. And that is when I get a chance to connect with them, the first question I ask after, it's like, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I'm excited to chat with you about this particular opportunity and try to make it a warm conversation, not an interview, not an interrogation, just getting to know you. Before I dive in to tell you more about this opportunity, I'd really like to know what makes you open to explore this opportunity with me right now. And that gives them the ability to not answer, tell me about yourself, to not say, here's why I'm applying specifically. They're telling me their motivation, their purpose behind why this particular role at this particular time. And it's very often that they'll say, well, right now I'm 5 days in the office and I got to commute downtown. This location would be so much better for my commute. And it's a good fit because of, whatever job match there might be. So that comes up right away on their end. And if it doesn't, that's one of my first questions before I start telling them about the role is, well, this is going to be a hybrid work arrangement. Just want to make sure that you're on the same page about what that means, what that looks like for us, the expectation, and try to get that out of the way right off the bat, because there's no point in me telling them, 7 minutes about here's what you'd be doing in this role at our company. And then same with them telling me about their work history if that part not going to work out.
I remember when, I think it was 2021. So this would have been like when everybody was kind of going back to the office, at least initially with the hybrid. We went through the whole process and we were talking about hybrid. We just kept saying hybrid really late on. And this is my fault, but I think it was just everybody's fault because we just hadn't really thought that maybe hybrid could mean different things. We got down to it and it was like the client thought that hybrid, in their mind, hybrid was 3 days in the office. Unfortunately for the candidate, they wanted 2 days a week in the office. Got down to the offer stage, and unfortunately, we couldn't make it work over that. And so then I learned the lesson quickly. Like, what is hybrid? Let's define this really quickly.
Yeah, it can be confusing, and I can see how some jobs get posted that are fully remote, but it's listed as hybrid because you need to be on the road to go to different restaurants to be able to do the work right. But that's totally a different hybrid than what we have in our corporate settings. So I think if I could give that advice to all job seekers when they see hybrid, let's quickly define what does that actually mean for the business, because here's what I'm looking for as a candidate to make sure that's aligned.
Yeah, you mentioned something too with this whole idea of like when someone's like authentic, or, obviously nowadays we've got all these AI tools that people can use where they can take the job description and almost create like a perfect resume. What are some of the things that you see that really help people stand out, especially when there's, let's say you get 100 applications in for a job opening? Like, what's your advice for people in how to like remain relevant and authentic, have the right information, and maybe even still leverage AI, but like what's too far? Like, what are the things that stand out for you that you go, yeah, what, I want to call this person?
Oh man, that's a good question. I am huge on authenticity, and I'm also quick to be transparent, even if it's not the information they want to hear. And so when it comes to like the application process, I don't have an answer for that, because everybody's going to want their resume to look a certain way. As an in-house recruiter who looks at resumes all day long, and the faster I can get to the information, the better. The folks who have their resume that's pretty well aligned with their LinkedIn, like that's an easy scan for me. I can tell really fast what they're looking for. But if it's like 3/4 of a page about here's my summary, here are my skills. If you want to put that at the end, great. It's helpful for those that need to like Control F, find the word AWS cloud engineer, whatever it is they're looking for. But for me, I want to see you as a human first, not as you could do as a robot. So, I want to see your name loud and proud on the top. I want to see your email address. What is your email address? That'll tell you a lot about a person. And then,
wait, what do you mean by that? What's the more in that? Let's get into that.
Oh my gosh! I mean, when I was doing volume recruiting, I would like keep a laugh poster up, and I'd write down some of the funny names people would use as their email address. But if it's not a professional looking email, even these days, I still see people use like their university email as their professional one. That's cute. I can tell they're trying hard in that younger age of professional. But I don't know, just, even if it's initials and 1975 at yahoo.com. Like that kind of tells you who this individual is. They haven't probably innovated or been curious about being innovative and trying new things in a long time.
So like John Smith, 1927 at SBC Global.
Yeah, those folks, like I have a persona in my head about who that person is, and I'm going to guess their S is 1925, some street that they're on.
Right.
But the one thing that I still laugh every time it happens is when I click on someone's LinkedIn in their resume and it takes me to LinkedIn page not found. It's like, come on, people. Please test your own links before you submit your resume, because
it could just mean they blocked you. That's the only thing.
They blocked me. I know, which would be funny because I'm the one they're trying to meet. But yeah, I would just give that recommendation. Have your LinkedIn link on there. Have it actually spelled out, linkedin.com/joelwalchi.com, however it needs to be. That way, if I click on it and it doesn't take me to the right spot, I know where I need to go and just fix it myself. But if it just says LinkedIn and it's a link that doesn't work, that's not helping anybody. My favorite, the funniest one was a local candidate had the LinkedIn to someone with the same name, but that person lived in Seattle. He had like a doppelganger. They didn't look alike, but his profile was sent to someone. Like he put that on his own resume inaccurately. And the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I know that guy doesn't pay attention to details.
Yeah, it's strong attention to detail needed. Perfect. Yeah. So, okay. So sounds like for you want to get into it right away. Like, what are you doing? What have you done? What are you doing in your role? Making sure things are matched to LinkedIn is also helpful, which I tell people all the time, right? Like,
of course,
the less questions you can produce from that, the better it is. Because I know I've worked with even hiring managers will ask that. Like, wait, the dates aren't matching, like what's going on, what aren't they telling us? So those are huge. What about in terms of follow-up? Like, let's say someone applies to a job, is it important that they're trying to follow up? Like, have you found that outreach helpful? Is that annoying? What are your thoughts with that? Because I know there's a lot of coaches out there that are telling people, hey, you got to follow up with the recruitment leader, you got to follow up with the hiring manager?
Yeah, that is a tricky one because when it's the right person that's following up, then yeah, it's great. But I get a lot of follow ups from folks who want information before I have been able to get it out to the right folks and back in before I can give them an update. And then I have to give them a, hey, I don't have information for you, but I wanted to acknowledge that you sent me a message. And that can be time consuming when you're managing 7 or 8 candidates per role. It's good if it's done like reasonably. Like if it's been 10 days and I let you know I would give you a follow-up and you're just wanting to know a follow-up at this moment, like, hey, I'm interviewing with other places, so I just want to know if it makes sense for me to keep this in mind or move forward. That's totally fair. And I will be the first to say, I get bogged down by all the administrative stuff. I'm a team of 1 right now doing the work of multiple. And so the follow-ups they can get put on the back burner, and then I'll batch them when it makes sense to do it all at once, which I would love to get the right AI system set up to make that a little bit more streamlined and quicker, but it is what it is today. But when I talk to folks who are like, can someone just give me advice? I've been applying for 6 months now and I still haven't gotten a job. If it's a friend or a friend of a friend, I'm like, here, spend 30 minutes with me. I'll tell you what it's like on the recruiting side so you can at least know how to go about your next 6 months, hopefully not that long, but however long it takes you to get the job, to have some insight to that. Part of my recommendation is start a spreadsheet, make a list of the top companies you want to work for, rank them, and then start like identifying folks that are either the hiring manager for the kind of role you're looking for or people on the recruiting team that you can just ask, hey, is it likely that you might have a need for someone with these skills or interests in the near future? If they don't respond, no big deal. But if they do, then you can at least start the conversation. And hey, if they end up in the business, I give out really solid referral bonus for people in our company. And I'm sure it happens at a lot of other companies too. So I tell them to think of it as you're doing them a favor. They'll get a bonus if you get hired.
I mean, I think that's really good advice, right? At the very least, tracking your activity is huge, because I know sometimes I get together with people and they're like, yeah, I've applied to a ton of jobs. And it's like, well, how many jobs? I don't know, a ton. And then we get down to it. They've applied to like 10 jobs in 6 months.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's not a ton. That's actually not a lot at all. Usually it is a little bit.
But it was very uncomfortable for them to do it. And so it was very heavy. It felt like a ton.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, get a spreadsheet to track the jobs you're applying to.
Yes.
I like that idea of like targeting companies you actually want to work at as well. You have like the networking aspect as well, which we talk a lot about on this show, which is reaching people at those companies, reaching out to people who are in the same industry you look to work in, looking at people and looking at networking with people who are actually in your role or just in your field in general. Nowadays, it's like you have to try a lot of different strategies. I know one of the guests we had on a couple of weeks ago said that he actually got the job from just cold applying, but then like he was getting traction networking.
Was that guy?
Who was that?
Was it the guy at Calendly?
Logan over at Calendly. He's like, I did all this networking. And then he's like, then I got a cold apply. He's like, so forget everything I just said. But I'm like, you have to be able to do all those different things. What about in terms of, you mentioned a little bit about this, like the way your interview style and how you interview people. I'd love to know, from a candidate experience point of view, how you manage that, right? You're a 1-person team. I don't know how many different openings you're working on, but if think in 8 to 10 candidates in play per role, you might end up with 50 to 100 people that you kind of manage. So what are some thoughts around how to give a really good candidate experience, especially if you don't necessarily have all the tech that you would need, to streamline and kind of keep that all together?
It's certainly not easy. And with us, we don't have a lot of the tech. Applicant tracking system is very bare bones. You're
going to get every single ATS vendor hitting you up after this too.
I know. Well,
I can send you 3 right now if you want.
I have who I will want to work with in 3 years when our current contract is over.
Nice. All right. The amount of people who are going to reach out now just went down. So.
I know what I'm looking for. I've shopped for that. I'm planting the seeds to get us there. Thank you for trying to quell the
protecting the inbox.
Thank you. I appreciate that because the inbox from the agency recruiters and the vendors like ATS teams overwhelming. But I mean, for me, I use Excel as my like CRM, which is like bananas to me that that's how we have to do it today. When Chat GPT exists and people are taking rides to outer space, that I have to use Excel to manage my candidates. But then I know which ones are actually in my who I'm working with. And
Yeah.
then I keep track of like, when did my hiring manager respond to me about this candidate or not? I've got that on my timeline. So it's a lot of that, unfortunately, but it's the way that if I need to show my work, it's a quick screenshot and then sharing it with my manager or the hiring manager or their manager. If someone's like, where are we at with these candidates? We've been doing this for 3 weeks and I'm confused. It's like, well, let me show you. So that's what seems to work consistently. I've tried this, that, and the other thing because I'm curious and I'm like, ooh, maybe this would work better. Or, oh, this is a new tool. Or I'll try the free version of this for now and see how it goes. But I always end up going back to good old Excel. And it also helps when I'm transferring knowledge if I'm going out and I need someone else to pick up where I left off. Everybody knows Excel that much if you're in the business.
So you're using Excel to kind of track everything. How about with the conversations? Obviously, you kind of dealing with, I'm sure at times, people who are frustrated with the process, or you're having to let people down. I know one of the things that has been coming up a lot recently is like rejecting candidates, right? Like you have some of it sounds like you got some knockout questions that you can ask where they'll get an automated response. What about people who are further down in the process? Like, how do you handle those conversations?
Yeah, so depends on where they're at in the process. I have signature templates that I've put together for the type of rejection they need. Like, well, this will be a hybrid only position. Like if it's hybrid only, I have a signature for that. If they're out of the salary band, I have a signature for that. If it's your interests and skills align and I see your potential, but what the hiring team is looking for is someone that can prove credibility quickly with their partners, internal and external. And that's just going to be too hard of a sell. And so I try to give them that kind of feedback. And then there's another one if they've interviewed and I've presented them to the hiring manager, there's a different signature for that. And if they've talked to the hiring manager, I try to give them a call after.
How do you find most people want to talk on the phone after that? Or is it
No.
okay.
I feel like it's the right thing to do. And it always felt the best for me when it happened to me that way. And so that's just the way I want to do it. But usually nobody picks up their phone unless I ask them, can I give you a call? And then I leave them a quick voicemail of letting them know, hey, I just wanted to touch base personally to let you know where things stand. Feel free to give me a call back, or I'll follow up with an email later. And if they don't call me back in an hour or two, I just email them and let them know how we decided to move forward with someone else or what the reason was. But I just try to keep it personal, like I see them as a human. I see their value at where they are in the process. And I don't want them to ever feel like they were just a number in our process, because I have to decline gobs and gobs of candidates robotically. Let me at least be human to the ones that I've touched along the way.
That's what people want, right? I think it's that care and that empathy throughout the process. But, I've seen people make posts like, I call every single candidate I reject. And it's like, well, some people don't want a phone call. Some people want the email, but it's like you said, it's putting in that effort to make them feel like, hey, you actually matter throughout the process, which I think that's just a huge complaint right now. And to be fair, like, even though you don't have the tech necessarily the way that you want to, you're still probably doing a better job than a lot of teams that do have the tech. And I think sometimes like we can rely on tech to like do that part of the process. But, even just like a voicemail or that personalized email, it can go a long way, especially if they know that like you wrote it versus it just being templated. But then you have the balance of some people you do have to just do the template for, right? Like if they answer a knockout question and they haven't talked to anyone, you have to manage the time. I think it's really, really challenging nowadays. I think a lot of times people aren't always thinking about what's it like on the recruiting side, where you're managing multiple roles and multiple candidates and multiple hiring managers. gets really, really messy really, really quickly.
That's like this part of the whole cycle. And it is time consuming and it is something I think about a lot. But it's like when I'm talking to a hiring manager that doesn't really know what they're looking for, job descriptions before they get posted, there's a lot that goes into it before we begin that process. And anytime we have a backfill, it needs to begin. And so it's on average around 10 or 11 roles at a time. But there are peaks where it's 18, 19 roles. And the candidate management in that is really tough. And then anytime someone's hired, I do the rest of it too. I'm processing their I-9. I'm getting them set up for orientation. I'm following up with the hiring manager. The full cycle is quite long, and the sourcing, interviewing, presenting is just the middle chunk.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing a lot there. The job of like 3 or 4 people, so you should get a raise. That's what I'm asking for. Where can people connect with you? I know we're coming up to the end of the show here. Where can people best connect with you? Where can they find out about, is it CKE Restaurants, right?
Yeah, CKE Restaurants, Carl Karcher Enterprises Restaurants is our name. You can, LinkedIn is the best for sure. Find me, Chrystal Gualtieri. I'm on LinkedIn. A lot of our employer branding is done on LinkedIn. And so that's a great place to get to know us better. Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in one of our opportunities, I don't always say that I'm the recruiter for the role, and I know there's going to be a lot of folks, but I am. It's me.
No, I love that. So if you're in Nashville, most of these roles are hybrid. So if you're in Nashville, definitely connect with Chrystal. And then are you going to go to any events coming up, or are you going to be out and about?
I am very excited to go back to RecFest. I have probably...
Shout out RecFest.
Yeah, shout out RecFest. I think I individually have convinced at least 4 people to come along with me. And I don't know
They're
how
not
many
even recruiters. They're just regular people. And you're like,
no, they're recruiters. But I'm like, why aren't you at RecFest? Come with me. It'll be great. So yeah, I'll be there in the fall.
Huge shout out to RecFest. Chrystal, thanks so much for joining me today. Hopefully, if people listen to the show, find value, go find Chrystal on LinkedIn. And then guys, if you are wanting to get more involved in the show, if you got questions for me, you can go to www.therealistrecruiter.com. If you made it this far, you're a legend. We couldn't do the show without you, so appreciate that. And if you want to sponsor, you want to be a guest, anything, just get a hold of me. Go to www.therealistrecruiter.com. And we'll be back next week with another episode. And you will also find us live at RecFest as well. So super excited about that. So, all right. Thanks, Chrystal. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Joel. See you later.